These home builders are doing massive price cuts across America. They are driving down the value of real estate across Florida. In this video, I'm gonna show you 40, 50, even $60,000 price cuts from builders. On this house here, which is under construction, the builder just lowered the price from $440,000 down to $370,000. That's a $65,000 price cut. And on these houses up here, which are soon to be completed, the builder is doing $30,000 to $40,000 price cuts. And the big issue that a lot of these builders are facing is a massive pileup of inventory. Data from the US Census Bureau is showing that there's now almost 130,000 completed spec homes sitting on builder lots across America. That's the highest level of spec inventory we've seen since the 2008-2009 crash. And what's amazing is that despite this housing downturn, these builders just keep on building. Look at what's behind me, everyone. Mounds and mounds of dirt, parking lots, new homes, townhomes being built in the distance. Go across the street, same thing is happening. Go across the street, same thing is happening. These builders are on a mission. And they're just going to deliver more and more homes, more and more townhomes to the U.S. housing market, particularly down here in Florida. And I mean, they almost seem intent on crashing the market. I mean, it's kind of crazy to me that they're still going in the midst of this downturn. The home buyer demand here is down about 30 or 40% from pre-pandemic norms. Don't tell that to these builders. They are continuing to build and build fast. And what I think is really interesting is what these builders are doing to home prices and what their strategy is. I've talked to some of the people in these communities. I've talked to some home builders and they're saying, we're gonna keep building. We don't care if we have to cut the price 14, 15% to move the inventory. We're gonna do that so we can sell those homes and then move on to the next community. And the result is that home values are officially dropping. If we look at data on the Reventure mobile app, we can see here in Parrish, Florida, values are down anywhere from 2 to 5% year over year, depending on the zip code. But I think those values could go down by even more in the future due to, I don't think it's that far. I think it's just around the corner. But it's been for sale for 3 years. They originally had it at $850. They've cut it to $660. There's a house over there, just down to the left, it's $559. They bought it in 2023 for $572. So they're already taking a $12,000 loss, but it's been on the market since October. Wow. And it has like 7 saves on Zillow. Because you have to understand, everyone, there's basically 2 different housing markets operating in America right now. There's the builder market and the resale market. And on the resale market, we're still in a big housing bubble. A lot of sellers who are selling their homes are refusing to admit that prices are going down. They're refusing to admit that the market has changed, and they're still listing their house at a sky-high price. Meanwhile, builders in states like Texas and Florida are getting with reality quickly and are cutting prices and showing you where the market is. And so in some ways, what's going on with these builders can be seen as a leading indicator of where the market is going overall. And one way to prove this, everyone, is to just look at the stock price of some of these builders. D.R. Horton, the largest home builder in America, who builds nearly 100,000 homes a year, their stock is down 24% over the last 6 months. Meanwhile, Lennar, the second largest builder in America, they're down 20% over the last 6 months. Now, these builder stock prices are collapsing as the rest of the stock market continues to grow. The S&P 500 is up around 10% in that span. So net adjusted, the builder stocks are down 30 to 35% compared to the rest of the market. And one really interesting thing we're now seeing is builders, since they're cutting the prices so much here in Florida, they are now causing issues for resellers on the market. Imagine you bought your house in Florida 2 or 3 years ago at the peak, and you think it's worth 500 grand, but next door, a builder is delivering the newer version of your house for 400,000 or 450,000. If that's the case, do you think that your house is gonna sell? Obviously not. I'm here in Parrish, Florida. This is about 30 minutes from St. Petersburg and 30 minutes from Tampa. We're in Manatee County. One of the nicer home building developments I think I've been to recently. Really good landscaping, very green. The houses, while they're similar, aren't identical to each other. And then you got some good landscaping. And so, this is something to think about when you're buying in a home building community, is the aesthetic. Some of the home building communities are super cookie cutter, don't have landscaping, don't have a lot of green, don't look very nice. This one does look nice, and you can see there's actually a lake over here as well. However, even with this nicer aesthetic, the people selling in this neighborhood are not able to do it. It's just down the road. The builders have brand new homes that they're cutting the prices on $60,000, $50,000. and they're giving mortgage rate buy downs. But folks, I'm about to show you a house with an even bigger price cut. Just over here, you can see it for sale in the same community. This is a house they've been trying to sell for 3 years. They bought it over 3 years ago, still can't sell it, and they've done nearly a $200,000 price cut. You can see it right here. It's a bigger house, it's right on the lake. So the backyard backs up to the lake. It's on the water, great views. They originally had it listed at $849,000 in 2022. They've now cut it to $669,000. Still sitting on the market with just almost no saves. So I want you to think about this, everyone. Like, a lot of people out there are just still not believing that this downturn's happening. And I'm showing you the specific examples of it happening. Whether it's here in this home building community, the other home building community I was at, or houses that Blackstone is selling at a 25% loss. These are tangible examples of people losing money on real estate. And for so long, they told you that that was impossible. For so long, the mainstream in real estate and all the hype people on YouTube and Instagram tried to say, oh, housing market's never gonna go down. Buy houses, real estate's gonna go up forever. And yet we are seeing it play out right before our eyes, especially with these builders also doing aggressive mortgage rate buy downs. In this community here, the builder is offering a 4.3% mortgage rate in the first year of the loan. A reseller selling their house cannot compete with that. So one thing you have to understand if you're a seller is where your market is. And if you're competing against the builders in your neighborhood to sell, because if you are, it's gonna be a very tough time for you, and you're gonna have to get a lot more realistic about what your house is worth. And of course, this is something we saw, everyone, at the beginning of the last housing crash in 2007, 2008. We saw the builders flashing these warning signs before anyone else on the market. The builder stock prices peaked around 2006, and then it was 2 years later where the full-scale crash occurred. In this case, the builder stock prices peaked about 6 months ago when the Fed initially cut interest rates, and since then, they've been in a big correction, a big collapse. And, you know, there's lots of people out there who still don't believe that we're in a housing downturn. And to those people, I would say, please wake up and smell the roses. Look at what is happening right now. Builders are cutting prices, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on houses. In some cases, they're cutting these prices down all the way to replacement cost. You can buy houses in some of these communities in Florida now, $150 a foot, and they just keep building. The number of builder homes for sale in the South is now up to over 300,000, the highest level of all time. In combination, the number of resale listings in the South is up to almost 500,000. So combined between resellers and builders, we now have the most homes for sale in the South in America going back a decade. And the important thing, folks, to remember are the regional aspects to this housing downturn in 2025. It's not happening everywhere. It's not yet national, but it's spreading, and it's spreading fast. And one of my concerns for some of these builders, like D.R. Horton, is their exposure to the areas that are getting hit the most by this housing downturn. Nearly 50% of their revenue comes in 7 different states, with a vast majority of it coming in Texas and Florida. And so what happens to D.R. Horton's stock and their operations if Texas and Florida hit a housing downturn? And I've talked to some people who sell homes in these communities, and they're telling me that there's some interesting buyer numbers coming in. A lot of buyers who do buy in these builder communities are doing so with very low down payment mortgages. And this is something that's scary and bears watching. The average down payment on a D.R. Horton house is 12%. And a lot of people are now using the 3 to 5% FHA mortgages to buy these homes, meaning that there's a lot of risk inherent in these communities, and that if prices keep going down, we're going to see a lot of these owners underwater very, very quickly on their mortgages. And when they go to resell their house in a couple years, they're not going to have a chance of reselling their house without having to stroke a check at closing because the value of the house has gone way below the mortgage amount. And this is the catch-22 of buying from a builder, everyone. So on the positive side, you're going to get a cheaper price up front. You're going to get potentially a mortgage rate buy down. You're going to love your monthly payment if you buy from a builder. On the flip side, that builder is potentially going to compete with you 2 to 3 years later when you go to sell that house. And the underlying value of what you're buying in a builder community probably isn't that high. So don't expect much long-term appreciation, if any long-term appreciation, if you buy in a home builder community in the South, in America right now. But there's another interesting thing to consider about the home builder market right now, and that's what Trump is doing with tariffs and deportations and how that's going to impact the cost of building a home in America. I mean, two of Trump's hallmark policies his first month in office are deporting immigrants and lowering immigration, while also threatening and in some cases actually putting forth tariffs on certain countries and certain goods. Trump threatened tariffs on Canada and Mexico. They haven't happened yet. However, there have been 10% additional tariffs on China. There's now 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel. Who knows what's going to happen with lumber? That's the big one that builders care about. If those tariffs end up going in on Canada, that's going to cause the cost of lumber in the US to go up, which is likely going to lower the earnings potential for these home builders. And the thing I'm curious about is if we do see an increase in the cost of building a home, are these builders actually going to be able to pass it off to the consumer? Because there's already this massive supply of inventory. Remember, there's 130,000 completed new build homes sitting empty on builder lots across America right now. That's the highest level of vacant inventory in 14 years. It's the second highest level of all time. So there's already all this inventory that builders are having to discount and give mortgage rate buy downs to move on. So what I fear for the builders is I don't think there's much room for them to absorb higher costs in labor, higher costs in materials. I think if that does happen and Trump goes through with those threats, then we are going to see deteriorating profitability for the home builders over the next couple of years, which is something that will cause their stock prices potentially to go down by more. It might be one of the reasons why their stock prices are already down 20-25% over the last 6 months. Now, I want to show you some examples of how these home builders are screwing over people who bought from the builders a couple of years ago. This is a neighborhood here that was a brand new neighborhood 3 to 4 years ago. There's some houses that owners bought in 2022, 2023 that they're now trying to sell, and they're not able to sell them. They're losing money. And one of the houses is just over here. You can see the for sale sign. It's a 3-bed, 3-bath, currently listed for $559,000. And that is about a $12,000 loss from what they bought it for 2 years ago in 2023. And this house, it's been on the market now for almost 6 months, for almost 180 days. It only has like 6 or 7 saves on Zillow. They're already taking a $12,000 loss, and they're likely going to have to take a bigger loss if they want to sell it. Again, this is something that's good for you as a prospective buyer. As a prospective buyer, there's more selection hitting the market. There's cheaper prices. These prices still probably have to get even cheaper before it becomes a good time to buy. But for an existing owner, it's a more complicated story. Like if you bought one of these houses at the peak, you're not liking where this market is going right now. I mean, the people who are in bigger trouble here, or in big trouble, are those who bought in 2022 and 2023 and even 2024 towards peak price. Those people are going to lose money. Whether they're existing owners, investors, builders, they will lose money if they went in and had a cost basis at 2022 levels, 2023 levels. Now, there's other people that own in Florida or Texas or many other parts of America who bought 10 years ago. And those people, maybe you're one of them watching this video, you bought your house in 2015, or maybe you bought it in 2019, right before the pandemic, or even in 2020, right before the massive spike in prices. You might have bought your house in 2019, 2020, and you experienced 50, 60% appreciation. So you might be saying, hey, Nick, 10%, 20% decline, I don't care. And that's like a good perspective to have. A lot of the existing owners on the housing market can afford to take a big loss because they built up so much equity. It's just a matter of more and more people understanding what's going on in the market and actually realizing what's happening. And I think this is occurring step by step. More and more the mainstream news is getting on board with the idea that home prices are going down. Business Insider just had an article on the 10 cities where prices are dropping most. Wall Street Journal's talking about how Wall Street thinks home prices are 35% overvalued. Wall Street Journal's also releasing articles talking about how home sales are at 30-decade lows. So more and more in the mainstream consciousness, people are understanding that we're in a housing downturn. And as that continues, more and more people will be able to accept the fact that prices are going to go down and need to drop. And more sellers are going to get on board with that. Because I want to show you some data right now, everyone. This is almost hilarious to actually look at the chart I'm about to show you. It's the inventory level in the zip code I'm in right now in Parrish, Florida, which again is in Manatee County. We're on the southeast side of the Tampa-St. Pete metro. And if we open up Reventure App on the Reventure mobile app, which I've been using, everyone, you guys should download it after this video if you want to check out this housing market data. We now have over 420 homes for sale in this zip code. Now, prior to the pandemic, the inventory in this zip code was around 100 80 to 200 homes for sale. So we have 2 times as much supply now as pre-pandemic. And compared to what it was in 2021, we have about 8 times as much supply. And so when we're in this supply-rich environment, when the market is saturated, when there's all this inventory, and you have a correction and a crash taking place, one thing I really suggest you guys do is understand if this is happening in your city, in your zip code, because this market is now moving fast at lightning speed. These dynamics are changing, supply is hitting the market, sellers are cutting prices. You gotta understand what the trends are in your zip code. So head to the App Store right now on Apple and Android, type in Reventure and download the Reventure mobile app. This just got released. You're gonna be one of the first people to download it and start checking out home price and inventory data in your housing market for free.